Chances are you've probably taken a test or survey recently. Assessment is everywhere, whether it's a quiz in an online course like this, a poll that tries to gauge political and social attitudes, or a standardized test like the SAT to measure math and verbal ability. So how do test and survey makers choose questions that best capture what they're looking for? What questions help us distinguish between people with varying opinions or abilities in a certain domain? In this section, we'll talk to Joseph J. Williams, a computational cognitive scientist. He'll tell us about the item response model, one of the most widely used models for questions on standardized tests. You'll use dynamic graphing tools to help understand this model, its variables, and parameters. Then we'll hear more about how these models are created and used in putting together a test. Lastly, Joseph will share about his own work on models for enhancing learning. By the end, we hope you'll not only know more about test questions, but be more comfortable with parameters and how to analyze complicated-looking equations. For this section, you'll need to know the basics of differentiation, limits at infinity, and graphing functions. Let's get started.
I'm originally from Trinidad and Tobago, in the Caribbean. If you were curious, that explains the accent. I'm a scientist on the research team at Harvard's Office of the Vice Provost for Advances in Learning, where we work with on-campus and online courses to investigate learning and teaching. My research creates adaptive systems to enhance and personalize people's education by integrating computer science, psychology, and statistics. Now, you've probably taken many tests in your life. You might wonder, what makes a good test question? This series of videos will help you understand that by discussing some mathematical models that are commonly used by test makers. Let's say we're trying to measure some characteristic of people. A characteristic like height or weight can be easily measured with a ruler or a scale. But what about characteristics we can't measure so directly? For example, math ability on the SAT. We call this a latent trait. Attitudes are another example of a latent trait, like a person's attitude towards a social issue. We often measure a latent trait by asking questions on a test or survey. This raises the issue: what makes a question good or bad at measuring a particular latent trait? For example, answer the following trivia questions, which are designed to measure your knowledge of world geography. Try to think about what makes some questions better than others at measuring what you know. We'll come back to these in the next video.